Este é o Azul. Viva! Este é mais um episódio do podcast do Azul, o projeto do público sobre ambiente, crise climática e sustentabilidade. Esta semana continuamos a partilhar novidades da grande Conferência dos Oceanos que aconteceu em Lisboa. A editora Teresa Firmino entrevistou Vladimir Ryabinin, secretário executivo da Comissão Oceanográfica Intergovernamental da UNESCO, que é também um dos diretores-gerais adjuntos do Organismo das Nações Unidas. Este oceanógrafo e climatólogo russo começa por falar sobre o que conhecemos e o muito que falta descobrir sobre o estado do oceano. E conta à nossa editora Teresa Firmino como anda o caminho rumo ao Objetivo de Desenvolvimento Sustentável número 14, dedicado à proteção da vida marinha. Esta entrevista a Vladimir Ryabinin foi conduzida em inglês.
Hello, Vladimir Ryabinin. You are the Executive Secretary of the Intergovernamental Oceanographic Commission of UNESCO, known as EOC. UNESCO just launched a recent report on the state of the ocean. What are the main conclusions of that report?
What we know about the ocean is qualitative, or sometimes it's just feelings or kind of perceptions. And I was writing the executive summary of that report and realized very painfully that what we know in terms of numbers is not enough to have very strong decisions, to have motivation for actions. And for me, this is the learning exercise and a very painful lesson that we are not where we should be in the knowledge of the ocean and what can be done there.
So what can be done? You have that knowledge now, that the information of the ocean is more qualitative than quantitative. So what should be done now? What is the next step?
You know, in principle, the knowledge should have been, I think, much more precise and quantitative. And we have all elements for that. We have the Global Ocean Observing System. We have also a lot of other networks that go outside the Global Ocean Observing System. So I think we need to basically consolidate the work on observations, on knowledge, and invest into this, because the mindset and also the funding, the sources of funding are very much focused on scientific description. And people who participate in this business, they tend to be happy if they publish a good paper, which is a very important thing, but it does not create for us the basis. So I think it was a lesson, and we are moving forward from that stage where we don't want to be to the stage where we would like to be. There is a process towards that.
But about the funding, it's a question of it's necessary more funding, or you have to change the way the funding is applied on science?
I would say both. Speaking about money, which is a very important topic for everyone, but I would say it's not really about money, but in principle, speaking about this. So the size of the ocean economy is trillions of US dollars. That is the gross domestic product that is generated every year by the whole set of countries in the world. And then they invest into ocean research, something like billions of dollars. That means 3,000 times less. And IUC, the organization that I work for, we are able to invest less than $1 million in the coordination of that research. And you can imagine that. So we under-observe, we understudy the ocean, and we also under-coordinate what we do. That needs to be changed. This is about numbers. But also, it's also about the direction. So I think for the first time, we are offering to all these networks a coherent and logical way forward, because this logical way forward is called sustainable ocean management on the basis of planning. And that planning should be based on science. For the first time, I would say, even in history, we can offer to all these networks a very meaningful agenda that will result in sustainable use of the ocean. So that has never existed.
So we are here discussing the Sustainable Development Goal 14. What is the state of this SDG concerning the life below water?
The thing is that Sustainable Development Goal is a way for the world to formulate certain goals that would be understood by governments, by people. Of course, the life is much more complicated than just formulation of this SDG 14, as we call it. But it has 10 targets, And the targets were focused on protecting the ocean, helping artisanal fisheries, developing law for activities in the ocean, and obeying to the law. There are many targets. So my organization is responsible for reporting on two targets. This is about ocean acidification and also the state of the ocean research. These are probably one of the most complicated targets in the Sustainable Development Goal 14 because, once carbon dioxide gets into the ocean, makes ocean water more acidic, there is no way you can take it out. And also investment in ocean science has to be made. And this is not in the culture of this civilization. So I have to say that this conference in Lisbon is, I think, very big step forward in the right direction, but from a very grave situation where we are. So there were several targets in this SDG 14 that were focusing on fisheries subsidies, on marine protected areas, and none of them they were supposed to be implemented in 2020. Of course, we had COVID, but it's not because of the COVID, but it didn't happen. But now there is progress. And for example, in Geneva, the World Trade Organization, all of the member states agreed completely by consensus that they have to stop harmful fishery subsidies. Big step forward. Now the world is mobilizing on allocating 30% of the area of the planet on land, also in the ocean, to marine protected areas. So, we are getting in the right direction. We are not yet fulfilling the established plans, but we are getting there. So this is what is happening. And what is equally important is that now we do this on the basis of science. It was easy to say we are assigned this area of the ocean as marine protected area. But is it important? It would be a sensitive area biologically. Nobody really cared at the beginning because it was political. Now it is really substantial, meaningful. That's the change.
You mentioned ocean research. The United Nations proclaimed this decade as the decade of ocean science for sustainable development. What are the major outlines of the program?
It is the IUC that is coordinating the implementation of the decade. This process started for us in 2016. We felt that we needed to change the situation with the organization, funding, direction of ocean science. And then we started to work with member states of the IUC, and they also agreed in 2017 to support that idea. It was huge enthusiasm. Then we supplied the idea to United Nations General Assembly. That was submitted as International Decade of Ocean Science. But Assembly understood the value of that proposal, and they proclaimed already in December 2017 that United Nations Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development, which gave us 3 years to organize the work and develop the implementation plan for the decade. We agreed on 7 qualities of the ocean that we would like to see in 2030. I would say clean, productive ocean, and also inspiring and engaging ocean. So you see that some qualities are about the ocean, some qualities about the people in their relation with the ocean. And that is a big change. We also outlined 10 challenges. These are areas in which we have to start working for the decade. And people were enthusiastic. IUC was not doing this alone. I would say thousands of people, hundreds of organizations, dozens of countries. And I think it is now changing the situation with the ocean research in the world. First of all, this conference, which is attended by presidents, is about science and innovation. And that is a big step forward in understanding that science needs to drive the evolution of this complex world. Because, it's not an easy decision. Science has to drive that. And the United Nations proclaimed the decade, but there was no budget assigned to that at all. So it was proclaimed, it was formulated within structures and within resources. It didn't discourage us, and we started to assemble the work. Now we have already funding for 43 programs in the decade, and they're large undertakings. And I have to say this is the largest undertaking ever in the history of ocean science. There were fantastic experiments in the past. Many things started. Everyone remembers the Challenger expedition. This is much larger. Also, this is a science that is not based on the sense of curiosity, but it is focused to deliver on the problems of society and the planet and the ocean. So already like $1 billion is engaged in this work. We need 4 times more. but the momentum is positive, the engagement is significant, mobilization of resources is going to come, people are enthusiastic. And because of the lack of resources at the beginning, we did not announce this as the funding of research. We announced this as a co-design exercise between decision makers, between scientists, and because of that, the Decade is also very big think tank in which communities of practice focusing, say, on coastal prediction and many other things are working together. Also, very importantly, more and more we realize that it's not about technocratic science. This is also about social science and human nature. And we have a program on early career ocean professionals, of leadership of women in ocean science. We are actively stimulating the leadership of small island developing states, not participating, but leading the science. So that is also the very significant societal change, leading to much better relations between humans also is happening. So that is a big step forward.
So you'll say that is action based on or grounded on science, but also action connected with politics and also with society and people.
That is true. That is true. For me, the most important element of all that movement, that is indeed a combination of what you said, but also on very important ethical ground. And I think this unites good people and creates the energy and also the atmosphere that was not available before.
Regarding scientific knowledge on the ocean, what are the big unknowns right now? For instance, the ocean carbon cycle, its behavior, it's a big unknown.
You know, I used to work for climate research as part of the World Climate Research Program. And this is the program that actually runs a lot of research projects, also runs models that people know as IPCC climate predictions. In those predictions, there are sources of uncertainty. The sources of uncertainty are related to the processes that we don't know or that we don't represent in models. They are also related to the fact that we don't know the decisions, we don't know the actions of the humankind. And there are some other sources, but the unpredictability of our environment, political environment, minds of people, is at present the largest source of uncertainty for climate, for the ocean, for our future. But indeed, when it comes to climate domain, the emissions of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, they are determining the pace of the global warming. And everyone knows that ocean absorbs heat, that is extra heat generated by the greenhouse gases, and also absorbs from the atmosphere the carbon dioxide. And I have to say that indeed we also coordinate. We have a program which is called Integrated Ocean Carbon Research. And we try to predict the future of the so-called carbon sink for the ocean. It's a tough thing, but we can state that indeed, depending on the rate of the current emissions, there are 7 factors. You know, some of them are complicated, some of them are less complicated. The ocean will be, first of all, warmer, and the ocean will be kind of more saturated with carbon. Both things work in one direction because warmer water is unable to absorb as many gases as the cold water. And there will be more carbon absorbed. So because of that, everything indicates that the ability of the ocean to act as carbon sink is diminishing. While there is still significant uncertainty in the quantitative, and this is estimates, this is exactly what I told you at the beginning of this interview. We know the idea, but we don't know the quantitative realization of those possibilities. So that needs to be done. Then we can imagine what is the consequence for the world of that lack of quantitative knowledge, because we need to know how much carbon emissions we need to cut in order to arrive at the livable world, and that depends on the future carbon sink from the ocean. That uncertainty should not be taken as an excuse for not cutting carbon emissions, because, you know, the faster we cut them, the easier it will be to avoid apocalyptic world.
Based on your knowledge, do you think we already passed beyond the 1.5 Celsius degrees rise in the temperature?
It is clear that in order to stay within 1.5, and that 1.5 should be clearly formulated. This is 1.5 degree warming. That is the average surface temperature of the atmosphere in comparison with pre-industrial values, that the reference point will be 1850, and that we don't want to exceed by the year 2100. In the climate system, because of the inertia, yes, I think we already are beyond 1 degree. I don't precisely remember the number, but I think right now, I think we are getting to a much higher world. And in order to be within 1.5 degree, we have to take carbon away from the atmosphere.
Taking away from the atmosphere, but that would imply geoengineering.
Yes, and this was a taboo topic and fully understood at the time why it was taboo, because, the consequences of all elements that were proposed for this geoengineering, and we analyzed them in the World Climate Research Program, the side effects for that treatment were much worse than the disease itself. But now we are realizing that we need to extract carbon. That's clear. So there is some mobilization to start thinking about this. But, this is human nature. We know we need to be doing this. We need to find a solution that is acceptable for all. There is a lot of ethical issues related to this uncertainty, scientific complexity, reliability, safety. So that is a big thing.
Your organization, it's all about cooperation. After Ukrainian and the Russian war, how do you think this war affected international cooperation in general in scientific research, but also in particular in the ocean research and cooperation?
So Teresa, this is a very sad story, and I have to say that indeed international cooperation, particularly in science, has a wound, it is damaged. And also because of my Russian background, I know how difficult it may be for my counterparts, but at the same time I have to say that in the IUC, we work for the ocean, and ocean tends to actually concentrate the best people in the world. This is a community that is friendly, that is peaceful, a community that sees the perspectives and also focuses on something that is much more human than the current politics. And because of that, I have to say that in the recent meeting of the Executive Council, there was a divide between communities at the beginning, but we ended up again as the real IOC, not only friendly, they were continuing to work together. So I think, Mário Ruivo would have been happy with IOC, because IOC is very, very resistant to politics. We are doing the right thing and will keep doing no matter what happens.
So do you think about this cancel culture that also affect Russian scientists, for instance?
Definitely, it affects scientists on many sides. It does. But, the science is, by definition, peaceful. Not all science, but I agree with that. But, our science is really peaceful. IUC was created actually as a platform for discussions between scientists, oceanographers from two sides of the political divide between the socialist and the capitalist world. And I have to say that now we are moving towards kind of, platform for just discussion to the platform for solutions that are based on science. Yes, there is a war, but, no one is going to stop climate change, not ocean acidification, stronger tropical cyclones. Coral reefs, for example, 90% of coral reefs are bleached and die. This will affect 1 billion people.
So in one word or in one expression, we do need cooperation to cope with this huge problem.
Yes, cooperation is, but cooperation is the word that is kind of, not very strong, because now cooperation is sometimes formal. But I think also with the help of the decade of ocean science, we are creating a new environment in which human will live in more harmony with the ocean, and because of the ocean also in more harmony between themselves. That is a big step forward.
And to finish, you mentioned Mário Ruivo, a Portuguese oceanographer that was the 5th executive secretary of EOC, and you are now also the executive secretary of EOC.
Yes, I'm number 9. He was number 5, yes. This is a bit personal. Mario passed away several years ago, and I had a discussion with him on the phone after he had a broken hip. That discussion was about the future of IOC, and at the time, we already had ideas about the decade, but they were not really formulated in a specific way. So we were discussing this with Mario. We discussed it for like 40 minutes. Mario just went out of the hospital, and he was very tired. And then he became unable to speak, so we decided to hang up, and then we decided to continue the discussion, but unfortunately this didn't happen. So, I have to say that, I try to continue the dreams of wonderful Mario.
You were a bit emotional when you were talking about Mário Ruivo, yeah, so I imagine that you know him quite well.
Yes, when I came a long time ago, we met with Mario, and then when I became the executive secretary number 9, executive secretary number 5 was kind of my delegate. He would never present himself as a mentor, but I was under his wing, still am.
Thank you so much, Vladimir.
Thank you.
Não saia daí, ainda faltam as nossas sugestões para explorar no site do Azul. Vem aí um verão seco com temperaturas acima de normal e pouca chuva. Quase todo o país está em seca severa ou extrema e o cenário deve intensificar-se nos próximos meses. A Cláudia Carvalho Silva, do Azul, conversou com especialistas para saber mais sobre o verão que nos espera e o Francisco Lopes tratou das infografias que também ajudam a perceber o problema. Neste contexto de seca, também estamos a gastar mais água do que devíamos. A Alexandra Prado Coelho, da Fugas, juntou-se à Vera Moutinho, do Azul, para um trabalho em vídeo sobre eficiência hídrica nos edifícios.
Todos os dias, várias vezes ao dia, abrimos a torneira, o chuveiro, descarregamos o autocolismo. Precisamos de água para viver. Precisamos de tanta?
Num país em seca, ainda estamos a assobiar para o lado no que toca à poupança de água. A nossa última sugestão é sobre biodiversidade. A humanidade usa cerca de 50 mil espécies de animais, plantas e fungos para as necessidades diárias, sejam elas a alimentação, energia para cozinhar e aquecer-se, na construção ou em usos recreativos como o ecoturismo. Mas um relatório divulgado na semana passada traça um retrato da exploração excessiva das espécies selvagens em todo o planeta. A Clara Barata esteve a ler este documento da plataforma Intergovernamental de Política de Ciência sobre Biodiversidade e Serviços do Ecossistema. Aprendemos ali que 1 em cada 5 pessoas no mundo depende de espécies selvagens para rendimento e alimentação. O desafio é fazer isso de forma sustentável. O relatório deixa algumas propostas para evitar a exploração excessiva. Tudo isto para ler e navegar em publico.pt/azul. Se gostou de ouvir este episódio, siga o podcast na sua aplicação preferida para não perder o próximo. Se tiver sugestões para nos fazer, envie para o e-mail aline.flor@publico.pt. O podcast Azul é editado por mim, Aline Flor, e volta daqui a 2 semanas. Até lá!
O público fica no ouvido.